David, next section.
Yeah, thank you. If I could, Joe, I just wanted to ask
Yes,
a couple of quick questions on the difference between applying for hire and pre-booking. And the market's changed rapidly because of the growth of app operators. Do you consider app operators to be applying for hire or pre-booked?
Pre-booked.
They're pre-booked. And to be pre-booked, does an operator have to have a live 24-hour telephone line in operation so that customers can call them if they want to?
Well, so you're probably aware that we did implement that as a requirement, which was legally challenged. That went through court. We went through the Court of Appeal with it, and we won. So that has now been implemented. So operators do need to have a way of a passenger being able to get in contact with them by the telephone if they require.
So all of your licensed operators now have a 24-hour, every single one? Okay.
Yes.
And does an operator have to take the booking in this country? Would it be, thinking, for example, about Uber, there's Uber London, and they have a parent company, Uber BV, which is based in the Netherlands. Would Uber London, which I believe is your operator, you've given an operating license to them, would they have to take the booking, or would it be legal or illegal if Uber BV took a booking instead of Uber London?
So and forgive me because I've just returned from maternity leave, so some of this is I'm trying to replace this with nursery rhymes.
We've all been there, Helen.
Pepper monkeys and bubblegum trees. That's all I'm going to say. So the bookings need to be held at the London Operating Centre. So I don't want to get into the specifics about talking about individual operators, but for all operators, the requirement is that the bookings are held at the operating centre, which is in London.
Okay, all right. Well, thanks. So I just wanted to clarify that before I move on to my main section. I'm going to ask you on is on the Mayor's action plan. And obviously, he put together the taxi and private hire action plan in 2016. What do you see as the successes and failures of that plan so far? And is there any plan to make another plan, if you like? Is it going to be? Is there going to be a new taxi and private hire action plan launched to update the previous one?
Well, no, I think the items in the action plan will still remain valid today, and we have implemented a number of those items. So the English language requirement, which of course I understand there are differing views on, and you've just heard some evidence on that. There's the card payment requirement for taxis, which has been implemented for quite some time. So there are a number of items within the action plan that have been delivered or are on track to be delivered. So there was quite a big consultation that we held earlier this year, which closed on the 25th of June. And we are analysing, we had over 5,000 responses to that. We're analysing those responses, but within that it contained a number of items that are in the Mayor's action plan.
One of the things that was said in the previous panel was about the English test, that there was no one, not many people were asking for an English test. I would personally disagree. I think it's very important that all taxi and private hire drivers are fluent in English. And what is the standard of the English test that you are implementing in terms of the EU standards? I don't know if you're aware, A1, B1,
so it's
C1, those systems.
So level B1 is the standard required for the English language test across 4 facets. So speaking, listening, reading and writing. And just to put it into context, level B1 is approximately age 11 standard. What we are saying is that anybody, there are a number of exemptions actually from having to sit the test. So if anybody sat for example, a GCSE, not necessarily in English, it could be a GCSE in geography, but that we would accept that as evidence. And actually on our website there's a number of things that we would accept as evidence, but the standard is sort of early secondary school level, and the written element of the test is approximately 100 words. what we recognise, and I think, you know, we've publicly announced, is that we do understand that writing a comprehension or a short piece on you know, the planet Mars isn't necessarily relevant to being a private hire driver. Well, not yet anyway, who knows in the future. And so we are working with the providers to bespoke the written element of the test to make it very relevant to being a private hire driver.
You mentioned B1 standard is lower intermediate. You just mentioned age 11. I mean, surely if someone is dealing with customers, they need a higher level. They need to be fluent, especially in their spoken and listening English, because they need to be able to interact with anyone that they come into contact with. I mean, you know, maybe you could say B1 for written English, but surely spoken and listening, you know, speaking and listening needs to be of a higher level. So, I mean, I would certainly support you in, you know, making the test as stringent as possible to ensure that, you know, all taxi and private hire drivers are fluent in English. I mean, what are you going to, you know, make sure that everyone is fluent in speaking at least?
Well, we test everybody on their ability across the four aspects, and I can only speak for, you know, from experience with 11-year-old children. I think they are very, very fluent. We having looked at the different testing levels, and we spent quite a bit of time doing that before we implemented the test. We felt that level B1 was the appropriate one. You know, on the written and the reading side, yes, drivers might not have to you know, communicate in writing with a passenger on every single journey, but for example, you know, the compliance team, if they issue a stop notice to a vehicle on street, they are generally handing a letter to the driver. The driver needs to be able to understand the content of that letter and take action. For example, if they are, you know, if the vehicle's been removed from service, which is a clearly a safety-related item.
I think, David, that we remember here that we're not trying to take past judgment on a level of customer service or something. What we're really trying to do is to look at the level required for safety. And so, you know, everybody will have a view on the different levels that might be required. B1 is the one that the team found to be the basic level, the minimum level required for communication for people in the event of an emergency. So there are obviously different aspirations for different standards. We are also sympathetic to the fact that this is an industry that does need to be open to a wide number of people to be able to come and do and to be able to fulfil this role in London. So, you know, we have to take everything into account.
Oh, well, I understand your position. Okay, I understand your thoughts on this. One of the things I think was in the action plan was about hire and reward insurance, and possibly bringing in the need for operators to have fleet insurance, because then that would solve the issue of people getting hire and reward insurance and then ditching it after a couple of weeks and then just getting on-off insurance or a level of insurance that doesn't properly cover them for accidents. What's the situation on that at the moment?
So it probably was, we included that in the consultation that closed in June. As I say, we've had quite a large response to that consultation, so we are still analysing the responses. Insurance is quite a complex area. I mean, the Motor Insurance Bureau effectively are the backstop for insurance if somebody doesn't have the right level of insurance. So from a passenger safety perspective, they are covered from, you know, because there is an insurance in place, whatever that looks like. So currently the requirement is for hire and reward insurance at all times when undertaking private hire bookings. We've explored that through the consultation, including fleet insurance and whether that would be appropriate for operators, but we haven't yet taken a decision, and I haven't reviewed the individual consultation responses.
I absolutely understand that's the requirement, and it's a good requirement to have, but in practice it's not always happening that way because people are circumventing the rules. and doing what they're not supposed to be doing. So, fleet insurance would be a way of ensuring that individual drivers cannot circumvent those rules, because you can make the operators have the fleet insurance. And I think this is something that a lot of people in the trade have offered as a solution. I think it's a very, very good solution. So I hope that you do take that on board and implement it. It's obviously there under consultation and discussion. The issue of safety has come up, and particularly I think we're talking about a lot of private hire drivers who don't have anywhere to stop, maybe driving around for many, many hours a day. And also there's the issue of looking at apps and phones, which can obviously distract drivers and then cause accidents. What are you going to do to cut down on that problem?
Well, clearly, private hire driver, like any other driver, needs to comply with legislation when using a handheld device. That legislation is obviously applies to everybody and is set nationally. So it's really important that that is the case, and that they are able to do so. Clearly, we have to, and it's unfortunate, in many ways that the speed of legislation is very, very hard to keep up with the latest innovation in technology, as you know. And as was said before in the previous session, there has been a huge amount of change in a relatively short period of time in this industry. We are keen to enforce the very highest standards of safety within the regulatory powers that we have. And we're very keen to make sure that is the case, whether that is in the black taxi trade, in private hire and so on, to make sure that we really do have very high standards of safety. So, the straight answer is any rule that applies to anyone driving a vehicle in terms of the use of handhelds must be complied with by somebody using a vehicle who happens to be a private hire driver.
So should they be stationary if they touch their screen or look at their screen?
Well, I'm not a...
Or take it, take a booking.
If
someone's moving and they're touching their screen and looking at it, they're not concentrating on the road. So should they be stationary every time they take a booking?
And absolutely, in the same way that you might be looking at your radio, or you might be touching a touch screen on your sat nav and so on. There are a variety of different models that are available in vehicles and for handhelds at the moment. We can only do what the law allows us to do, and the law in this area is set, in terms of needing to be a properly handheld device and fixed and so on and so forth. But the application of that is a matter for the criminal process, actually.
So if someone is not stationary when they are touching a handheld device or looking at it, then that's a criminal matter. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not an expert in the application of. I'm the Managing Director for Surface Transport for London. What I'm saying to you is we apply the same standards as everybody else does, because it is a police matter if somebody is using a handheld device inappropriately while at the wheel of a vehicle, and rightly so, because it's a safety issue.
Well, I haven't heard you say yes or no, but I'll take it as that's the answer you want to give.
David, straightforwardly, that's because I don't know every circumstance tested by law in this area. I'm being honest with you, because all I'm really trying to say, from a TFL perspective, we are very keen to improve safety standards, and this is a matter that is controlled by law for everybody. And I'm absolutely adamant that the use of handheld devices in vehicles on our roads, when it is not done in accordance with legislation, is not safe and should not happen.
Yeah.
Well, I'll take that as that's your answer. Okay. Well, thank you, Chair.
Okay.